Whenever you're creating animation in an animation package such as Toom Studio or Lightwave or Flash, you're always going to be dealing with a timeline. And a timeline is going to help you to see what's going on at a particular frame in the scene that you have selected. Now, from left to right, we have our frames as you see here. So this is frame 1, frame 10, 20, and so on. This guy right here is your scrubber or your playback head or your frame marker. There's lots of different names for it. Over here we have the elements that are in this particular scene. We have our ocean, ship, and so on. Up here we have some icons that do certain things. First of all, we have this guy right here, and which is kind of cool. It animates and it follows your cursor, but more importantly, it will hide and show your elements. If we click on the eyes, we can hide everything at one time, click on them again, and we can show everything. Likewise, we can also click on one element at a time to hide it. So I can deselect the ocean, and the ocean goes away, the ship, the clouds, and I can bring them back. And another button here is the solo button right next to the eyes, which is the show hide button. What this button will do is it will allow you to select an element and then click the solo button, and it will hide everything else while showing the object that you want to work on, which is kind of handy if you want to focus on animating or changing an element. And I can go ahead and turn that off to get back to where I was. This button here will allow me to add a new element or to delete an element. So if I no longer want the ship, I just hit this button right here and I've deleted that element from my timeline. I'll go ahead and bring that back by going to Edit, Undo, Delete Element. Over here we have our peg buttons. Now this button right here will add a new peg element, and then what you could do is drag an object or an element to the peg to attach it to it and make it its parent. And we also have this guy right here, which is very handy, which is the Add Parent Peg element. So what we can do is select an element here, click this button, and automatically have a peg attached to it with the name of the element. And we'll talk more about pegs in another lesson. This guy right here is our Scene List button. So we can click this and select whatever scene we like to work with in our timeline. And over here we have access to our contextual menu. So you can choose commands from here. An interesting button is this guy over here, which will split your timeline in two. So if you have a very long scene, you click this button, and now you can go to the first frame here, or you can scrub over here to get to the end of your animation, and you can work on both sides at the same time. Very, very handy, especially if you have a scene that has 1.5 billion frames, which I don't recommend, of course. It's better to do short scenes and then edit them later on in another application such as Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere Pro, which is what I normally do. Animate a short scene and save it, and then I'll have a whole folder full of movies which I can then piece together later on in an external application. So what you can do to return back to the regular timeline is click this button, and now the split is gone and you're back at your full timeline. And down here, of course, we have a button that will allow you to scrub the length of what you're looking at in the timeline, so you can decrease the amount of frames you see or increase the amount of frames you see. And of course you can scrub or scroll with the scroll bars down here if you can't see everything as well. So once again, the timeline is pretty much where you watch the progress of your animation as it plays back, and you can use these buttons to help you to work with the elements in your scene.